Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rival Recon here on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Harry Sethi. The champions began their Guard of Honour tour last weekend at Stamford Bridge, where a much-changed Liverpool side succumbed to a 3-1 defeat to Chelsea in a tight game that was ultimately decided by some sloppy defending from the Reds. Next up on their tour, Arne Slot's side welcome Arsenal to Anfield this Sunday, fresh from their Champions League exit in the semi-finals, courtesy of PSG, with Arteta insisting his side deserved to win and have been the best side in the competition, despite all the evidence to the contrary. How will they handle what's sure to be a raucous Anfield and a begrudgingly performed Guard of Honour for the champions this Sunday? Joining us on the pod to delve into what's been another season without any trophies for the Gunners under Arteta, and why this came to pass, and how they can kick on next time around, I'm delighted to welcome on Kaya Kaynak from Tifo Football and The Athletic UK. All right, welcome on, Kaya. Good to speak with you again.
Hey, Harry, thanks for having me on.
I think lots has happened this week. I was in the build up to this discussion. I was thinking about where do I begin in terms of talking about Arsenal. We were chatting just before we hit recording around sort of there will be Liverpool. Predominantly Liverpool supporting audience listening to this. Hoping that I don't know, start the pod with some sort of like chant, some sort of like quote from Arteta, anything like that. There's been plenty of that this week across the cesspool now known as X, for those who are you're aware of it. So I won't be delving into that, but we'll touch upon all these things, right? Because I think it's inevitable given some of the ambitions for the season and how things have unfolded, but. Given that we are kind of now at the end of the season, Arsenal know that they've got nothing else to play for other than obviously making sure, maybe finishing as high up as possible in the Champions League spots, and there's money associated with that, obviously. But if you were to go back to the start of the season now and contrast kind of what your expectations were for the campaign and where we've ultimately ended up, what was the gap between your expectations and, I suppose, reality?
Pretty big. I think a lot of people thought this would be Arsenal's chance to go on and win the league, particularly given how they've come so close. They pushed Man City to the last day of the season last year, and I think when that happens, you start to think maybe this could be Arsenal's year. And the signings they made, obviously, they missed out on a forward, and maybe we'll get to that later on. But the signings they made were sort of strengthening areas of the squad that needed to be strengthened. They did score a lot of goals last season as well, so. You kind of felt they had all the ingredients to be a title-winning team. And then obviously when Man City started imploding, you started to think maybe this is Arsenal's year, not necessarily because there wasn't competition, but more just because Man City, have been the team that Arsenal have been competing against for the 2 years prior. And when they fall away, you start to think this is Arsenal's season. So I think when that happened, lots of people thought and assumed that Arsenal would be the team to sort of take the crown, and it's not worked out. And so when you look at that, it's disappointing. I think the Champions League is obviously different in the sense that I don't know if anyone at Arsenal was expecting to win the Champions League going into it. It's a weird competition where, the weird things can happen, and there's obviously teams with a lot more history and pedigree in it than Arsenal. But I think massively in the league, it's a big disappointment, because this year felt like the year when Mikel Arteta really had to start winning trophies. He obviously won the FA Cup in his first season, but since then things have dried up on the trophy front. Obviously Arsenal are a much better side than when he took over, and there's definitely progress on that front, but you don't want to be a nearly team forever. And it felt like this was the year when Arsenal really had to start building on that, and it hasn't happened. So, yeah, there's a big gap between expectations and reality. It's been disappointing on that front.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up early in terms of, I remember thinking, I think when we did some of the preseason previews, thinking about sort of the top six and sort of what to expect from the teams. And I remember, I think fans are always bullish about their own team, right? So I remember I was probably pretty bullish about Liverpool, but certainly not about Liverpool winning the league, but about Liverpool being a bit better than everybody else thought they were going to be, because I didn't think there was too much wrong with the side last season, which is kind of like transpired. But the thing I remember mentioning about Arsenal was what you said there. Was I was thinking, okay, there's the some of the discussions that have been had this week, but obviously in a much more unkind way. But thinking about the amount of investment since Arteta joined the club, thinking about that this is a team really in his image now, as given sort of the number of years he's been at the club. That for me, what I thought was important was what you just mentioned there, to to win a trophy. And Liverpool fans will know, having been the team to be chasing City for so many of these recent seasons, that the Premier League is incredibly difficult to win, or has been incredibly difficult to win. And along the way, those trophies that the club picked up, and obviously European success is sort of the crowning achievement. The Klopp got to a number of finals, won one of them, but I think some of those domestic cups as well, that Liverpool picked up along the way, just helped. I felt, to keep the fan base on side, to keep, you can imagine, the squad on side. Sort of, okay, we're going in the right direction. Yes, we all know that there's other things that we want to be winning. I'm sure Mo Salah, as he's been pretty adamant about in the dressing room, was like not particularly fulfilled by a Carabao Cup win. Yeah, he wanted more than that, but it keeps people on side, and it keeps that sense of momentum. And I completely share what you said about Arsenal have a far better side than they were when Mikel Arteta arrived. But are you surprised that there wasn't more of a? I mean, did get to a league, FA Cup semi-final, of course. But are you surprised there hasn't been more of a determined go at those other trophies over the recent seasons as well, just because of how difficult it is to win the big two?
Yeah, I am. And Arsenal have been a little bit unlucky in their draws in the domestic cups. Obviously, Liverpool in the third round last season. Liverpool, in an FA Cup, you get them in the third round. You think the luck's not with you. This year, getting Manchester United. I know Manchester United are not anywhere near what they should be, and that Arsenal should have won that tie. And yeah, there's lots of disappointment there, but that is a big disappointment this year. And the League Cup. Obviously, Arsenal faced Newcastle in the semis, and that felt like something they potentially could have won, but they also came up against a Newcastle side who themselves were trying to end a 70-year trophy drought and felt really motivated and felt they could win it. And as Liverpool know, Newcastle in that competition were very good this season. But it's disappointing because those are trophies that, like you say, you can win. And Arteta in his press conferences was very big on winning breeds winning. And listen, Liverpool didn't win the league a couple of times, as you mentioned, but they did win, like you said, the Champions League. They won a domestic cups after that when they weren't winning, and it just keeps that success around the club and that know-how of how to get over the line in the big moments, which once you've done it once, you sort of have that to fall back on in the future, and you're not as nervous approaching the big moments. And I think for the Liverpool squad, that's been huge, particularly this season, when the most impressive thing about Liverpool has been how unflappable they've been when things have gone against them. And I think a big part of that is because so much of this squad last season obviously won was it the Carabao Cup that Liverpool won last season? And obviously domestic trophies before that, FA Cup and League Cup, I think, before that, and Champions League and leagues under Klopp. So I think that know-how within the squad has helped Liverpool get over the line where Arsenal have struggled, and Arsenal have given a lot of points away from winning positions this season. They've faltered when the going has got tough this year, which is really disappointing. And I think partly that does come from not taking the domestic cup seriously enough. And when you look at the FA Cup in particular this season and how winnable it became very early, with obviously Liverpool losing to Plymouth and the rest of the teams not looking particularly strong. I know Man City are, looking like they're favourites to win it now, but I think Arsenal would have fancied themselves against City in a cup competition at this stage this season. So yeah, there is big disappointment for Arsenal that they haven't taken these domestic cups as seriously as they probably could have done. Arteta's fielded quite changed sides in a lot of them, but draws are a big part of it as well, and they've been unlucky. They've got some big teams early doors, and that does make it more difficult. But at the same time, you need to start winning these kind of games, and Arsenal haven't done that enough.
Yeah, I remember actually early in Klopp's reign. Actually, I think was it maybe the first three finals that we got to. We lost every single one of them. So yeah, I mean, it was an instant success. I mean, like Arne Slot's managed to enjoy this season with the Premier League. There was a number of kind of near misses. And I remember, as kind of laughable as it seems now, that he was getting that kind of status. Oh, is he a nearly man?
But he was like that at Dortmund as well, wasn't he? So yeah, I guess that was following him around. Yeah,
but it does feel like that's another reason why this pressure exists on Arteta. And you talked about the transfer business at the start of the start of the pod rather, and sort of who came in, who didn't, and of course. Some of the big purchases, the big three rather, were Calafiori, Mikel Marino, David Raya, and there were of course some loan loan transfers as well. Raheem Sterling being probably the most
Yes.
most notable of those loan moves and coming very late in the window. Um, yeah, of course, loads, tons, essays, theses have been written on Arsenal's need for a striker and a proper forward option. Um, my personal opinion, actually, for a while has been that I felt that Saka is the best, obviously best, not a revelation. Saka is Arsenal's best attacker.
Yeah.
But I've really felt the others actually have kind of flattered to deceive in terms of, for a long time I've felt my impression that Martinelli probably should be in the Trossard position at the
Mm.
moment, and Trossard should, well, I imagine he might leave, but the actually Arsenal were missing just a couple of elite forwards. And it didn't need to be a striker. I mean, we look at PSG and what they're doing in the Champions League this season. We look at Liverpool, winning the league this season. With a large proportion of that time, their £80 million striker has been on the bench because he can't score. I think it showed that there are other ways to do this. But the question I wanted to ask you is, obviously Arsenal are going to go out and try and get a forward in the summer. But do you think that also what's come home to roost a little bit is maybe just a realization that actually some of these players they haven't kicked on from where they were a couple of seasons ago, where they're so promising?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a more eloquent way for me to put this, but Harry, ball like that. That's it's a spot on when it comes to Arsenal. I'm of the opinion as well that Arsenal didn't need this mythical number 9 that everyone says they need. Kai Havertz, if he'd stayed fit, was on trajectory to end the season with 20 goals. That's fine. Liverpool had that in Roberto Firmino for years, and Kai Havertz, he's a decent penalty box option, but he's more of a facilitator to those around him, and he brings others into play, and he makes Saka play better. Odegaard plays better when he's in the team. And I think you can have someone like that, but you need to have, like Liverpool had for all those years with Mane on the left wing, you need to have someone who can hit those numbers.
All right, the Reds, it's Jack here, and that was a clip from one of Anfield Index's audio podcasts. If you have enjoyed the video, make sure you do like, share, and subscribe to keep up to date on all things LFC. We record around 100 audio podcasts every month, with our shows featuring match-going fans, top journalists, professional analysts, and even Liverpool legends along the way. With the great Dane himself, Jan Molby, joining us every single week. If you want to listen to all our podcasts for free, head over to anfieldindex.com/podcasts. Our audio shows are available wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Anfield Index. Or if you prefer to listen to all our podcasts in full and without any ads, why not head over to AI Pro today to check it out now at anfieldindexpro.com. If you want to get involved in the great growing community of Liverpool fans, check out the Anfield Index Discord. The link is in the description. Do get involved with that, from Reds around every corner of the globe. For now, Reds, hope you enjoyed this video.